The moment the front door swung open, 9-year-old Jada rushed inside, her backpack slipping off her shoulder as she called out, "Daddy." Her voice had that tight, urgent tone, one that made her father, Marcus, immediately put down his coffee. He knew that tone. It wasn't the kind that came from a scraped knee or a forgotten homework assignment. This was different, serious. He turned to face her, noticing how she stood there, shifting from foot to foot, fingers twisting the straps of her backpack. "What's wrong, baby?" he asked, his voice calm but alert. Jada swallowed hard. The bus driver did it again. Marcus felt his stomach drop. His mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. "What do you mean again?" he asked, stepping closer. Jada hesitated, glancing toward the window like she was afraid someone might be watching. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "He made me stay when everybody got off." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He crouched to meet her eyes, his hands firm on her shoulders. "Jada," he said carefully, "I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Jada took a shaky breath. "He pulled the bus over before we got to my stop. He looked at me through the mirror and told me to come to the front." She sniffled, her little hands balled into fists. "I didn't want to, but he said I had to." Marcus clenched his jaw. "Then what?" "He just kept asking me weird questions. Like if I told my parents about what happened last time. If I remembered what he said." Her voice wavered. "Then he just stared at me for a long time before letting me go." Marcus's blood ran cold. This wasn't the first time. He had brushed off Jada's first complaint as a misunderstanding. A mistake. Maybe even an exaggeration. She was just a kid, right? Kids misunderstood things all the time. But now, she was standing in front of him, her face pale, her little body trembling. And it was happening again. That was it. No more waiting. No more second-guessing. Marcus grabbed his phone and dialed 911. His hands were steady, his voice firm as he spoke into the receiver. But deep down, his heart was pounding. Because if this man thought he could mess with his daughter and get away with it, he had another thing coming. Marcus's grip on the phone tightened as the 911 operator answered. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, his mind racing ahead to all the possible outcomes. His daughter stood in front of him, her eyes wide, scared, but most of all, trusting. She was trusting him to fix this, to protect her. 911, "What's your emergency?" a calm voice said on the other end. Marcus took a breath, steadying himself. "Yeah, I need to report something. Something's been happening with my daughter's school bus driver." His voice came out sharper than he intended, but he didn't care. Every second that passed made his skin crawl. The operator asked for details, but before Marcus could answer, Jada grabbed his sleeve, shaking her head. "Daddy, don't," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. He said not to tell. That sent a fresh wave of anger through him. "What do you mean he said not to tell?" Jada bit her lip. "He said if I told, I'd get in trouble. And you might get in trouble too." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. That bus driver had threatened her, and she had held it in, carrying the weight of it, too scared to say anything until now. He had to fight to keep his voice calm as he spoke into the phone. "My daughter's school bus driver has been making her stay behind after the other kids leave," Marcus said, his words clipped. "I don't know exactly what's going on, but I need someone to check this out now." The operator asked more questions, his daughter's name, the bus route, the driver's description. But Marcus kept his answers short, his focus on Jada. She was still standing there, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to disappear. "An officer will be dispatched to your location," the operator assured him. "Please stay where you are." Marcus hung up, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. He crouched in front of Jada again, his hands resting lightly on her arms. "Listen to me, baby. You are not in trouble. Do you hear me? Nothing that man says can hurt us. I promise you that." Jada nodded, but her face was still tight with worry. Marcus pulled her into a hug, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. He needed to keep it together for her, but inside, he was boiling. A few minutes later, the red and blue lights of a police cruiser flashed through the window. Jada flinched at the sight, but Marcus held her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "It's okay. They're here to help." He stood as the knock came at the door. When he opened it, a tall officer with sharp eyes and a serious expression stood there, his badge gleaming under the porch light. "Mr. Carter?" Marcus nodded. Yeah, that's me. Come in. The officer stepped inside, glancing down at Jada, then back at Marcus. You called about a school bus driver? Marcus nodded, trying to keep his voice even. My daughter, Jada, told me he's been keeping her behind on the bus, talking to her, making her uncomfortable. And now she's saying he told her not to tell anyone. The officer's expression darkened slightly. He crouched down to Jada's level, his voice gentle. Hey there, sweetheart. I know this is scary, but can you tell me a little about what's been happening? Jada hesitated, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. She looked up at Marcus, and he gave her a small nod. Go ahead, baby. Just tell the truth. She took a shaky breath, then started talking. She told the officer the same thing she had told Marcus. But now, with every word, Marcus was realizing just how many times she had been scared to speak up, how many times she had felt alone in this. The officer listened carefully, nodding as she spoke. When she finished, he jotted something down in his notepad, then looked up at Marcus. We're going to need to follow up with the school district and the bus company. Do you know the driver's name? Marcus shook his head. No, but I can get it. And I want him off that bus immediately. We're going to look into it, the officer assured him. But I need to be honest with you. Without concrete evidence of wrongdoing, this could take time. Marcus felt his frustration rise. Time? My daughter is scared to get on that bus again. And you're telling me this is going to take time? The officer held up a hand. I hear you, but we have to follow procedures. What I can do right now is file a report and make sure this driver knows we're watching. Sometimes, that alone is enough to make them back off. Marcus ran a hand over his face. He wanted more than that. He wanted action. He wanted that man off the streets, away from his daughter. But he also knew how the system worked. He exhaled sharply. So, what do I do in the meantime? Just let her keep riding the bus with him. The officer shook his head. Not if you don't feel safe. You can drive her to school yourself until we get more information. And if anything else happens, anything at all, you call us immediately. Marcus looked down at Jada, who was still gripping his arm. You okay with that, baby? You don't have to get on that bus again. Jada nodded quickly, relief washing over her face. I don't want to go on the bus. Then you won't, Marcus said firmly. The officer handed Marcus his card. I'll be in touch as soon as I get an update. Marcus took it, his mind still racing. Thanks, officer. As the door shut behind him, Marcus turned to Jada, brushing a hand over her curls. You're safe, baby. I won't let anything happen to you. But as much as he wanted to believe that, wanted to reassure her, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Something about that bus driver didn't sit right with him. And if the police weren't going to handle it fast enough, Marcus would. That night, Marcus barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, his mind filled with questions. How long had this been going on? What did that bus driver really want? And most of all, had Jada been too scared to tell him everything? He knew his daughter. She was smart, strong, but still just a kid. And kids didn't always know how to put fear into words. His gut told him there was more to this. Something she hadn't said yet. At 3 a.m., he finally gave up on sleep and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. He searched for anything, complaints about bus drivers in their district, news stories, anything that might give him a lead. But there was nothing. No reports, no warnings, no mentions of anything suspicious. That didn't mean it wasn't happening. It just meant no one else had spoken up. By morning, he had made up his mind. If the police were going to take their time, he was going to get answers himself. After dropping Jada off at school, personally, no bus, he drove straight to the district transportation office. It was a small building near the bus depot, where rows of yellow school buses sat parked in neat lines. He walked inside, his jaw tight, and approached the front desk. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with glasses perched on the edge of her nose, looked up. Can I help you? Yes, Marcus said, keeping his voice steady. I need to speak with someone about a bus driver on Route 17. She frowned slightly. What kind of concern? Marcus exhaled slowly. My daughter rides that bus. Or she did. She told me the driver has been keeping her behind after the other kids leave. He's been saying things that make her uncomfortable. The woman's expression shifted slightly, like she was choosing her words carefully. Has there been a formal report filed? I called the police last night. That made her blink. I see. She glanced at her computer, typing something quickly. Route 17. That would be Mr. Reynolds. Marcus now had a name. He locked it into his memory. I want to know if there have been any other complaints about him. The woman hesitated. I'm afraid I can't disclose personnel records. Marcus leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. Listen, I'm not here to start trouble. I just want to know if my daughter is the only one. If other parents have come forward, the woman's lips pressed into a thin line. I can't officially say, but I will tell you this. If there had been complaints and nothing was done, that wouldn't be the first time. Marcus felt a chill run through him. He narrowed his eyes. Meaning? She glanced around, as if checking to see if anyone was listening, then lowered her voice. The district doesn't like bad press. If complaints don't have hard evidence, they tend to disappear. Marcus clenched his jaw. He had suspected as much. The woman quickly straightened and gave a polite smile. I'm sorry, sir, but I can't help you further. Marcus nodded slowly. Right? Thanks for your time. He left the office, his thoughts racing. If the district was covering things up, that meant they knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to know something was off. And yet, Mr. Reynolds was still driving kids around every day. Marcus wasn't going to let that slide. That afternoon, when he picked up Jada from school, he noticed something immediately. She was quieter than usual, her eyes darting toward the buses lined up along the curb. Marcus gently squeezed her hand. You okay? She nodded but didn't say anything. As they walked toward the car, she suddenly tugged on his arm. Daddy, look. Marcus followed her gaze. Across the parking lot, near the bus lanes, a man stood beside one of the school buses. He was tall, with graying hair and a uniform jacket. His hands were in his pockets, but his eyes were on Jada. Marcus felt a slow burn in his chest. Is that him? Jada barely nodded. Mr. Reynolds stared at them for a moment longer, then turned and climbed into the driver's seat of the bus. Marcus exhaled sharply, forcing himself to stay calm. He had to be smart about this. Jada needed him to be smart. He got her into the car, but his mind was already working on the next step. That night, he sat her down at the kitchen table with a notebook and a marker. Baby, I need you to help me with something. Jada looked up at him, confused. What? I want you to think real hard. Think about everything this man has ever said to you. Everything he's done that made you feel weird. And I want you to write it down. Jada hesitated. Even the small stuff? Especially the small stuff? She looked down at the blank page, then picked up the marker. Slowly, she started to write. Marcus watched as words filled the page. Did you tell your parents yet? You don't need to be scared of me. I can tell we have a special friendship. His stomach turned. Jada kept writing. I like when you sit up front. We don't have to tell anyone. Some kids don't have good dads. You're lucky. Marcus's hands curled into fists. He had seen enough. This man was testing boundaries, seeing how far he could push. Marcus wasn't about to wait for him to push further. Baby, he said softly, I need you to trust me, okay? I'm going to make sure this never happens again. Jada looked up at him, her eyes full of something he hadn't seen before. Hope. Marcus wasn't just going to sit back and let this man get away with it. If the district wouldn't listen and the police were slow to act, fine. He'd handle this his way. But as he sat back, gripping the notebook full of his daughter's words, one thought crept into his mind. If Mr. Reynolds had done this before, had he done worse? Marcus sat in his car outside the school, gripping the notebook Jada had filled with her memories of Mr. Reynolds. His jaw was tight, his fingers tense around the steering wheel. He knew he couldn't wait anymore. If this man had done this before, if there were other kids, he needed proof. Something the police couldn't ignore. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Pulling it out, he saw a text from an unknown number. At first, he almost ignored it, but something made him open the message. You should stop asking questions. Marcus felt his pulse pound in his ears. His first thought was that it had to be a mistake. But then a second message came. It's better if you just drop it. His grip on the phone tightened. Someone was watching him. Someone knew what he was doing. He glanced around the parking lot, eyes scanning the rows of cars, the groups of parents picking up their kids. Nothing seemed unusual. But that was the problem. Whoever sent this could be anyone. He took a slow breath, keeping his face neutral. He wasn't dropping anything. If anything, this just proved he was on the right track. Jada came out of the school doors, walking quickly toward the car. Marcus forced a smile as she climbed in. "Hey, baby. How was your day?" Jada shrugged, buckling her seatbelt. "It was okay. Ms. Rivera let me stay inside for recess." Marcus frowned. "Why?" Jada looked down at her hands. "I didn't feel like going outside." Marcus knew what that meant. She was afraid. Even here at school, in the middle of the day, she felt like she wasn't safe. That was enough to make his blood boil. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Marcus noticed something in his rearview mirror. A bus. Not just any bus. Route 17. Mr. Reynolds was driving, and for a split second, their eyes met in the mirror. The man gave a small, almost smug smile. Marcus's hands gripped the wheel, so tight his knuckles went white. That was it. That night, after putting Jada to bed, Marcus made a decision. He wasn't going to wait for the police or the school. He was going to get proof himself. By midnight, he was parked near the bus depot, sitting low in his seat. The buses were lined up in the dim glow of the streetlights. He watched as drivers clocked out, one by one, heading to their cars. But Mr. Reynolds, he hadn't left yet. Marcus checked the time. Almost 1 a.m. What was he still doing here? A few minutes later, the bus door creaked open, and Reynolds stepped out, looking around before heading toward a smaller building on the lot. Marcus frowned. What was in there? Moving carefully, Marcus got out of his car and kept to the shadows. As he got closer, he saw Reynolds unlock the door and slip inside. Marcus waited a few seconds before following, his pulse pounding in his ears. The door was slightly ajar, and Marcus peered inside. What he saw made his stomach turn. There was a desk cluttered with papers. A small TV played security footage. And on the wall, photographs. Not just any photographs. Photos of kids. Different schools. Some smiling, some looking away. And in the corner, a picture of Jada. Marcus felt a wave of cold rage wash over him. His daughter's face, pinned to the wall, like she was part of some sick collection. His first instinct was to storm inside, grab the man, and make sure he never got near another child again. But he forced himself to stay still. Think. He needed proof. He quickly took out his phone and started snapping pictures. The wall, the desk, the files, anything that would show the truth. Then he turned his camera to the small TV screen. The footage showed the inside of a school bus. The timestamp was from last week. The camera was focused on a single seat. Jada's seat. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The footage was looping, playing the same few seconds over and over. Reynolds leaning toward the mirror, watching her. Marcus didn't realize how hard he was gripping his phone until his fingers started to hurt. He had everything he needed. He turned to leave, but as he stepped back, the floor creaked under his foot. Marcus froze. From inside, a chair scraped against the floor. Then footsteps, coming closer. Marcus barely had time to move before the door swung open. And there, standing in the doorway, was Mr. Reynolds, smiling, like he had been expecting him all along. Marcus locked eyes with Mr. Reynolds, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The man stood in the doorway, his face twisted into a knowing smirk, like he wasn't surprised at all to find Marcus there. Like he had been expecting him. For a moment, neither of them moved. The only sound was the low hum of the security monitors inside the room. Then Mr. Reynolds tilted his head slightly. Looking for something? Marcus tightened his grip on his phone, his mind racing. He had the proof, pictures, video, enough to make sure this man never got near a child again. But standing here, face to face with him, Marcus could feel something else. This wasn't just about his daughter anymore. Mr. Reynolds had done this before. And from the look on his face, he wasn't scared. He wasn't worried. He was confident. That was the part that sent a chill down Marcus's spine. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady. Mr. Reynolds let out a soft chuckle, stepping just a little closer. "You think you're the first parent to come looking for answers?" His eyes flicked to Marcus's phone. "You think you're the first one to dig around where they shouldn't?" Marcus didn't say anything. Mr. Reynolds leaned in slightly. "Tell me, have you ever asked yourself why nothing happens? Why complaints disappear? Why people, concerned fathers like yourself, end up walking away?" Marcus's stomach twisted. Mr. Reynolds smiled. Because you're playing the wrong game, Mr. Carter. Something about the way he said it made Marcus's skin crawl. Before he could respond, a sound outside made both of them freeze. The distinct crunch of gravel underfoot. Someone else was there. Marcus glanced past Reynolds and caught movement in the shadows near the bus yard. A figure. Watching. Then, a second figure. Marcus's breath caught. He had walked into something bigger than he realized. And now, they weren't alone. Reynolds must have seen the shift in his expression because he let out a small, almost amused sigh. I was really hoping you'd be smarter than this. Marcus took a step back, readying himself. His pulse was hammering in his ears, but his mind was already running through options. He could run, but they'd expect that. He could fight, but he didn't know how many people were out there. No, he needed to be smart. You don't scare me, Marcus said, his voice low. Reynolds just smiled wider. Then you're not paying attention. Marcus made his move. Without hesitating, he turned and sprinted, shoving past Reynolds and bolting for the open lot. The cold night air hit his face as he ran, his only thought getting to his car. Behind him, he heard footsteps, fast, heavy. They were chasing him. He wasn't going to make it to his car in time. His eyes darted around, scanning for cover. The buses. At the last second, Marcus veered left and ducked between two parked school buses, pressing himself against the metal. He forced his breathing to slow, listening. The footsteps stopped. Then, silence. Marcus knew better than to think they had given up. They were waiting, watching. His mind was racing. He had the evidence on his phone, but that wouldn't matter if they got to him first. He needed to send it. Slowly, carefully, he pulled out his phone and opened his messages. His hands were shaking as he typed out a text to the one person he trusted most. Call the cops. Now. Send them here. No questions. He attached the photos, his thumb hovering over the send button. Then, a shadow moved. Too late. A hand grabbed his arm, yanking him backward. Marcus twisted, trying to break free, but another set of hands grabbed him, forcing him against the side of the bus. His phone slipped from his fingers, hitting the pavement. Reynolds stepped into view, shaking his head like he was disappointed. You should have walked away, Marcus. Marcus struggled, but the grip on him was too strong. His chest heaved as he looked Reynolds dead in the eye. You're never getting near my daughter again. Reynolds smiled. You still don't get it, do you? He crouched down, picking up Marcus's phone. He glanced at the screen, his face unreadable. Then he sighed. You made this so much harder than it needed to be. Marcus's heart pounded. His only hope was that the message had sent before his phone hit the ground. Because if it didn't, he might not make it out of this at all. Marcus's breath came fast and uneven as Reynolds loomed over him, holding his phone. The two men restraining him tightened their grip, their hands like iron clamps on his arms. His muscles burned from the struggle, but his mind was racing faster than his body could react. Reynolds tapped the screen, scrolling through Marcus's messages. His expression remained calm, almost bored, until his gaze froze. Marcus saw it in his eyes, the shift. The moment he realized, the message had sent. Reynolds' fingers curled around the phone, his jaw clenching. For the first time that night, Marcus saw something new on his face. Fear. Marcus swallowed hard, knowing this was his only chance. He wrenched one arm free, driving his elbow into the ribs of the man on his left. The guy let out a sharp grunt, momentarily loosened his grip, and that was all Marcus needed. He twisted, using the momentum to shove the second man off balance. Reynolds took a step back, his grip tightening around the phone. His eyes flickered toward the entrance of the lot, as if calculating how much time he had. Marcus didn't give him a second more. He lunged, his fist connecting hard with Reynolds' jaw. The phone slipped from his hands, clattering against the pavement. Marcus dove for it, fingers scraping against the concrete as he grabbed it. Footsteps pounded behind him. He barely had time to move before one of the men grabbed the back of his shirt, yanking him backward. Marcus hit the side of a bus hard, pain jolting through his ribs. But then, sirens. Distant but getting closer. Red and blue lights flashed against the side of the buses, cutting through the dark like a warning shot. The men froze. For a second, everything stood still. Then chaos. Reynolds bolted, The men with him hesitated only for a moment before taking off in different directions. Marcus, still gasping for air, forced himself up. He wasn't letting Reynolds escape. Ignoring the pain in his ribs, he took off after him, sprinting between the rows of parked buses. He could hear the sound of approaching police vehicles, but they weren't here yet. If Reynolds got away now, he might never be caught. Marcus pushed himself harder, his feet pounding against the pavement. Ahead of him, Reynolds was fast, but Marcus had something he didn't rage. Just as Reynolds neared the fence at the edge of the lot, Marcus lunged. He tackled the man to the ground, both of them crashing hard onto the gravel. Reynolds twisted, swinging wildly, but Marcus dodged the hit, grabbing his arm and pinning it behind his back. "You're done," Marcus growled. Reynolds let out a sharp laugh, panting beneath him. "You think this stops anything?" Marcus's fingers dug into his arm. "I know it does." Then, more footsteps. Flashlights beamed through the darkness. Officers surrounded them, their voices sharp and commanding. "Hands where we can see them." Marcus slowly lifted his hands, stepping back as the officers swarmed Reynolds, pinning him to the ground. More officers spread out, searching the lot. Marcus saw two of them grab the other men who had helped Reynolds. They hadn't gotten far. It was over. Marcus exhaled, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. One of the officers approached him. "Mr. Carter?" Marcus nodded, his hands still shaking. "We got your message." The officer glanced at Reynolds, now handcuffed on the ground. "Looks like you did half our job for us." Marcus let out a breath that almost felt like a laugh. Almost. He looked down at Reynolds, whose face was twisted with something between anger and disbelief. For the first time, he looked like a man who had finally run out of places to hide. But Marcus wasn't done. He turned to the officers. "You need to see what's inside that building." The officers moved quickly, stepping inside the small office where Marcus had found the photographs and security footage. He could hear their reactions, muttered curses, sharp instructions, the crackle of radios calling in reinforcements. One of the officers stepped back out, looking pale. "You weren't the only parent looking for answers," he murmured. Marcus's stomach twisted. He already knew that, but hearing it out loud made it feel heavier, more real. One of the officers radioed in the Discovery, confirming that an investigation was already underway. Whatever Reynolds had been doing, whoever had been protecting him, it was all about to come crashing down. Marcus stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. Then he pulled out his phone. He found Jada's name in his messages and quickly typed, "It's over, baby. You're safe." A moment later, 3 dots appeared. Then a response. "Okay, Daddy." Marcus closed his eyes for a brief second, exhaling. But just as relief started to settle in, a voice cut through the night. One of the officers, standing near one of the patrol cars, his radio still crackling. His face was grim as he turned to his partner. "There's another name on this list," he said, holding up a file they had pulled from the office. "One that doesn't belong." Marcus felt something in his chest tighten. The officer frowned, flipping through the pages, then looked up. His eyes landed on Marcus. His expression darkened. "Mr. Carter, we need to talk." Marcus felt the weight of the officer's words settle over him like a heavy fog. His hands clenched at his sides as he forced himself to stay calm. The night had already spiraled beyond anything he had imagined, but there was something about the officer's expression, about the way he looked at him, that sent a fresh wave of unease through his body. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, his voice steady but tight. The officer hesitated for just a moment before holding out the file. Marcus took it, his fingers slightly numb as he flipped through the pages. His eyes scanned the names, dozens of them, maybe more. Children. Dates. Notes scribbled in messy handwriting. Some of the pages were old, yellowing at the edges, while others looked freshly printed. Then he saw it. Jada Carter. Marcus felt the breath leave his lungs. He had known she was on Reynolds' radar, but seeing her name written here, in ink, as part of whatever twisted operation this was, it hit differently. But that wasn't what made his stomach drop. Just below Jada's name was another. Angela Carter. Marcus's mind went blank for a second. His eyes locked on the name as confusion wrapped around his thoughts like a thick fog. Angela? His wife? No, that couldn't be right. Angela had passed years ago. Why would her name be in here? He turned to the officer, his voice low. What is this? The officer's expression remained unreadable. That's what we're trying to figure out. Marcus's grip on the file tightened. It didn't make sense. Angela had nothing to do with this. She had been gone for almost 5 years. What connection could she possibly have to Reynolds? A chill crept down his spine as a thought struck him. What if Angela hadn't just been in the wrong place at the wrong time that night? What if her accident hadn't been an accident at all? Marcus swallowed hard, his mind racing through memories he had buried long ago. The details of the crash had always been vague. A late-night wreck, no witnesses, no clear cause. He had never questioned it. Grief had swallowed him whole before he had the chance. But now, standing here, holding a file that linked her to a predator he had just helped take down, Marcus couldn't ignore the feeling crawling under his skin. Something was wrong. The officer watched him carefully. We'll be digging into this. But if you know anything... I don't, Marcus said quickly. And he didn't. That was the problem. The officer nodded, but his face remained serious. We'll be in touch. Marcus barely registered the rest of the conversation. The sounds of officers moving around the scene, the distant chatter of radios, it all faded into the background as he walked away, his thoughts tangled in knots. When he finally reached his car, he hesitated before getting in. His hands gripped the roof for a moment as he took a deep breath, staring at his reflection in the window. Jada, that was all that mattered right now. Shaking off the unease clinging to him, Marcus climbed into the driver's seat and pulled out his phone. He clicked on Jada's name, pressing the call button. She answered almost immediately. Daddy. Her voice was soft, tired but safe. Hey, baby, he said, forcing his voice to be steady. I'm on my way home. Did they get him? Marcus closed his eyes for a second before nodding. Yeah, they got him. Silence. Then a breath of relief on the other end. Okay. Marcus gripped the wheel. I love you, Jada. I love you too. Hearing her say it, knowing she was home, away from all of this, it was enough to pull him back from the storm in his head. He ended the call, started the engine, and pulled away from the bus lot, leaving the flashing police lights behind. By the time he got home, Jada was waiting for him on the couch, curled up under one of Angela's old blankets. When Marcus walked in, she didn't say anything, just stood and walked straight into his arms. He held her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. It's over, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Jada nodded against his chest. I knew you'd fix it. Marcus swallowed the lump in his throat. He wished he felt as sure as she did. Later that night, long after Jada had fallen asleep, Marcus sat in the dim light of his living room, staring at the file he had brought home. Angela's name stared back at him. He should let it go. He had done what he came to do. Reynolds was going away, and Jada was safe. That should be enough. But it wasn't, because there was still something unanswered. And Marcus had never been the type of man to leave questions hanging in the air, especially not when they involved his family. With a slow breath, he reached for his phone and pulled up a number he hadn't called in years. After a few rings, a groggy voice answered. Marcus? It's late. What's wrong? Marcus hesitated for only a second before saying the words that would change everything. I need to know what really happened to Angela. On the other end of the line, silence. Then a quiet sigh. I was wondering when you'd ask.